Hello, we are Jeff and Judy Heath, serving with SIL Chad. I'm a Bible translation consultant, and Jeff is a language technology consultant, and we're married to one another. Hence, the marriage of translation and technology. We've served with SIL Chad since 1998. For many years, I helped to translate the Old Testament into a major language of Chad. Now I work as a translation consultant and coordinator, making sure translation teams are well trained for their task. Jeff started out in IT, then shifted into language technology in Chad, but more broadly in Francophone Africa. We have a lot of experience helping translators and consultants to use language technology available for the task, especially Paratext, which is what we'll be focusing on today. Powerful software tools can speed Bible translation, but misuse of these tools can have a negative impact on translation quality. Sometimes translation teams misuse the software by not using the tools available to them. For example, we've seen teams that spell the name of Joseph 3 different ways across the New Testament because they didn't use the word list tool. Or they mistranslate the word barley because they didn't use the enhanced resource tool to understand what it was. Or they translate the word church in several different ways, such as assembly of God's people, or brothers in Christ, or churchia, because they didn't use the key terms tool. We've also seen translators misuse the tools available in Paratext. Perhaps you've seen this too? They might use a global search and replace inaccurately and really mess up their text. They might use the key terms equivalents poorly by having either too few equivalents, which means they force consistency where they shouldn't, or have too many equivalents, just so that the computer will check off all of the boxes. Sometimes they misuse the project plan auto checks. They overuse them and say, well, the computer wouldn't let me do it our way, so I changed our translation to make the computer happy. Oh no. Misuse of Paratext tools can have a negative impact on translation quality. However, carefully designed Paratext training can help translators apply the right tools at the right time for improved translation quality. Today, we'll focus on Paratext training that is tailored to the learner, anchored in the Bible translation process, integrated into other translator training courses, and provided at the right time by the right people. We'll start by looking at how we tailor our Paratext training workshops to the learners who are present. Translators and translation projects change across the life of the project. What they know changes, and what they need to do changes. We propose that there's 3 different stages across the life of a project. In the first stage, the translators are new. They need to learn, explore, and experiment. We call this the creativity stage, and it continues over a book or 2. In this stage, the translators think deeply about the book that they're working on. In the second stage, the translators are more experienced. They've experimented and now are ready to make some firm decisions and establish some principles for their project. While they continue to think deeply about the book they're working on, they also look widely, considering the translation of that book in the light of other books that they have already translated. We call this the consistency stage. In the third stage, the project draws to a close. The team needs to verify their consistency across their whole corpus and consider how to present their text to the reader. We call this the completion stage. We'll now take a look at each one of these 3 stages and the Paratext training that is required for each one. In that first stage, the translators are new. They think deeply about the text in front of them and consider different translation solutions. They should experiment with things like different translation styles, more literal, more dynamic, in between, with different key terms. For example, different ways of translating the name of God, or exploring how to translate the different law terms in the Old Testament. They might be grappling with some additional advanced orthography questions, like whether this morpheme should be attached to the verb or separated from it by a word break. And they may be slowly realizing that they need to use quote marks, especially in the nested citations in the prophetic books. So the paratext training for these people is specific to their stage. We give a new paratext user course to them right after they've finished their other translator training courses. This training focuses on using paratext for exegesis and for typing in their drafts. We teach them to use exegetical tools like a text collection, enhanced resources, handbooks. These things help them to dive deeply into their text. And we also show them how to manage their windows for quick information retrieval. After that, we show them how to type in their draft translation using the proper SFMs and a good view that's helpful for them. And finally, we teach them to save their project and share it with others through send and receive, or by printing it out for testing, and also how to read a project plan to know what their next tasks will be. In the consistency stage, translators are now more experienced. They have experimented and should be encouraged at this point to make firm decisions and establish some principles for their project. While they continue to think deeply about their text, they also need to look widely, considering other books that they've already translated. In this consistency stage, they will decide on their translation style, establish and record key terms, such as the names of God or law terms, settle those advanced orthography questions and punctuation issues that they raised before. Paratext training for this consistency stage will continue to focus on exegesis and information management, but now is the time to introduce tools that aid their standardization across the whole corpus. Tools like the key terms list, the word list, parallel passages, and automatic checks. Paratext training at this stage also helps them to communicate better as a team by marking their text with flags and by managing their tasks in the project plan. In our context, teams in this consistency stage return every year for 1 week of Paratext training so that they can really master the different tools available in Paratext. The final stage is the completion stage as the project is drawing to a close. The team needs to verify consistency across their whole corpus and consider how to present their text to the reader. They need to correct early texts to later standards. They need to verify consistency across the whole New Testament or Bible, and they need to work on reader helps, such as major introductions, a glossary, maps, and illustrations. Now, we don't provide a public Paratext course at this stage. Instead, we mentor each team individually in the final year of their project and show them how to use Paratext in new ways to finalize their New Testament or Bible. We work with them first to apply their decisions made in the consistency stage throughout their whole texts, using all of those tools, including the checklists tool that help them verify their standardization. Then we train them in new tools for producing reader helps. For example, using the front and back books to store their major Bible introductions and other paratextual information. We help them develop the glossary and mark the glossary terms, select place names for maps in special key terms lists, and learn how to insert illustrations and create captions for those illustrations in their text. So far, we've talked about, tailoring paratext training to the needs of translators in different stages of their project. But who else uses paratext every single day? Oh, right, translation consultants. Most consultants were formerly translators, but do consultants use paratext in exactly the same way they did when they were translators? No, there are new tools and methods that they need to learn. First, they have to update their knowledge of Paratext. New tools may have been introduced since they last used Paratext as a translator, things like the enhanced resources or the project plan, which are more recent. They now consult for a language that they may not speak, so the automatically generated interlinear tool in Paratext might help them a lot. And they may want to take notes on their exegetical research or comment on a project, so they might want to use consultant flags or a consultant notebook in Paratext. And finally, they need to be knowledgeable enough in Paratext to be able to mentor translation teams. But translation consultants are busy people. How can you get them to attend a Paratext training workshop? We use two methods to train translation consultants in Paratext. First, we catch them when they're consultants in training coming to their initial consultant workshop, and we help them improve their Paratext skills. But it's even more practical to invite your translation consultants to be the staff for each Paratext course that you offer for translation teams in your country. The Paratext workshop might be taught by language technology personnel, but your translation consultants will make fine helpers. They can listen and learn themselves, and then they can go around the room and help teams use the Paratext tools being taught. This kind of mentoring is what they need to be able to do in a checking session, and they can practice it here and now in Paratext courses.
In addition to tailoring our Paratext training to the needs of the learner, we also need to consider how we can anchor the training in the Bible translation process. The computer or IT guy might be tempted to teach a Paratext course anchored in his reality. Let's put on our IT hat and see what elements are important in Paratext. As the IT person, we need to register the user in the online Paratext registry, install Paratext and download resources, create and register any new project required, make sure that the user knows how to navigate in the program, including finding relevant menus and dialogues, and make sure that there's a project plan set up so the team can use it to track their progress. We might say that this perspective is more tool-oriented. Let's focus on the software itself and what that tool can do. But now let's put on our translation hat. What are the elements that are important for us as translators in Paratext? As a translator, we need to access our project, make sure we can modify the text by assigning tasks in the project plan, know how to use proper SFM markers, understand the source text, compare different Bible versions, correct problems identified by the scripture checks in Paratext, and access various tools like the word list and key terms tools to carry out the required checks. I might say that this perspective is more task-oriented. Let's focus on the tasks required in the Bible translation process. Paratext training should be anchored on this translation mindset and should focus on the translator's needs. Practically speaking, this means avoiding training users on one-time tasks, things like user or project registration, installation, application of the project plan. Just carry out those tasks for the team. It means teaching the Bible translation task, not the tool. With your translation hat on, make sure you understand what the translators are trying to do and teach them to carry out those tasks in the Paratext tool. It means giving them practical examples based on real translation challenges. Your translation staff can help you to create exercises with real-world examples. And we suggest using something like this translation path to anchor your training in the Bible translation process. The path shown on this poster gives the 6 stages of translation as developed in the SIL project plan. In our Paratext workshops, we ask the participants to work in small groups to reflect on all the tasks required in the Bible translation process, and then to identify roadblocks to their ability to follow the translation path. They write each roadblock on a Post-it note and attach it to the corresponding stretch of road along the path. For example, a Post-it with, "I don't know how to compare French versions," would block the path to exegesis and drafting. Learn steps to make key terms consistent would block the path to preparing for consultant. The photo on the right shows how the poster might appear after this exercise in a workshop taught in French. These roadblocks become training points for the course, and when participants indicate that a particular roadblock has been sufficiently addressed, that is, it is no longer blocking their progress, the Post-it note is removed from the poster. Hopefully, by the end of the course, there will be no more roadblocks, but just smooth sailing along the translation path.
So far, we have promoted Paratext training, which is tailored to the learner and anchored in the Bible translation process. Now we want to consider how to integrate Paratext training into other translator training courses that your branch might offer. A marriage of translation and technology looks like this. You offer Paratext training that is anchored in the Bible translation process, and then you offer other Bible translation training courses into which Paratext is fully integrated. For example, don't just offer a workshop on Psalms, but rather on how to translate Psalms using Paratext. Don't just offer an exegesis course, but rather a course on how to do exegesis using Paratext. In a recent Psalms workshop, we were considering different semantic domains in Psalms, domains like law terms or praise terms. To help the translators explore these terms, we taught them to use the semantic domains list in the enhanced resource. If you click on a word in the English version at the top, it shows you what Hebrew word underlies it. Below the definition of that Hebrew word is a label for the semantic domain it is in. If you click on that semantic domain label, it opens up a list of law terms in Hebrew. As the workshop participants were working on translating Psalm 19, they now had access to a list of all the different Hebrew law terms underlying the words in the psalm. This helped them to consider more globally how to translate law terms into their language. In a recent exegesis course, we studied how to do the exegetical steps with Paratext tools. For example, the first step in exegesis is to research the background of the book that they'll be translating. We learned to do that in Paratext by reading a book introduction in the various commentaries and translators' handbooks available in Paratext, and also by reading introductions to that book in some of the better Bible versions in their text collection. Another step in exegesis is to check for textual variants in the passage. Now, we could go back to BHS, but instead, our exegesis course taught the translators how to look for textual variants using the Hebrew Old Testament textual project data that's available in Paratext as a little t in the source window. We also taught them to read footnotes in several of the Bible versions in their text collection that provide text-critical information. So in our exegesis course, we examined each step in the exegetical process, and then for each one of those steps, we looked together at which Paratext tools could help them with that step. This shows one more way that translation and technology can be married together. You offer Paratext training anchored in the BT process, and you provide other Bible translation training courses into which Paratext is fully integrated.
So we've seen Paratext training should be tailored to the learner, anchored in the Bible translation process, and integrated into other translator training courses. It should also be dispensed at the right time by the right people. Let's consider first how much Paratext training is required. I recently had a conversation with a program manager about budgeting for a new 3-year translation project. How much Paratext training do you think they should budget for in the budget, in the project? So take a moment just to look at those options. Which one of those options do you think is most appropriate? Well, for this 3-year translation project, they propose to budget 2 days of Paratext training for the entire life of the 3-year project. I feel that's insufficient. That might be enough to get them started with basic tasks like opening Paratext, using send receive to update their project, and the tasks described by Judy in the creativity stage of the project. But how are they supposed to move into the consistency stage without additional training on using the word list and key terms tools? I feel that 1 week each year is sort of a sweet spot for how much Paratext training to provide. It doesn't overwhelm the time dedicated to translation, but provides the team with useful guidance along the way as they move through the different stages of the project. Note that the Paratext tool itself changes over time as well. If the last Paratext workshop you attended was 5 years ago, there are critical competencies that you are missing. Things like project plans and enhanced resources, as Judy mentioned when talking about translation training, consultant training. When I told the program manager that 2 days of Paratext training was insufficient, he suggested that the translation consultant would provide the additional training that the team needed during these consultant sessions. Well, I think it's a great idea for the translation consultant to provide Paratext help to teams during consulting sessions. That sort of ongoing Paratext mentoring is essential. But there are some significant problems with the consultant providing all of a team's Paratext training. Those of you who are translation consultants know how tight consulting schedules are. You're trying to get a certain amount of scripture checked in a short amount of time. Can you really do justice to Paratext training for the translators at the same time? Paratext projects pay for time with the consultant. In Chad, that's about $100 a day. A week-long Paratext course, however, in our training center costs around $170 for the week, including meals and lodging. You do the math. If you're budgeting for the project, a Paratext course is more cost-effective than relying on the consultant to give Paratext training. When is the last time that the consultant received Paratext training? Hopefully you will take to heart what Judy shared and invite consultants to participate in Paratext courses as staff, so they won't be behind in Paratext competency. Earlier, I mentioned the IT person as one who might give Paratext training. Well, that's a possibility, but within SIL, we have created a domain called Language Technology, where consultants are specially trained in translation, linguistic, and literacy tools. People in this domain are well suited to provide Paratext training, especially in collaboration with the translation domain. It is very helpful for each local organization in translation to have a person that dedicates at least a portion of their time to language technology. This person would be a key resource for providing Paratext training for your translation teams. Check with your local SIL organization to see what possibilities exist for training this person in language technology. Well, hopefully this presentation has given you some food for thought as to how you can marry translation and technology in your Paratext training. To improve the quality of your translation projects, we recommend that you make your Paratext training tailored to the people present and the stage they're at, anchored in the Bible translation tasks, integrated into other translation courses that you provide, and that you provide this training at the right time throughout the stages of the project, given by the right, well-trained people. Carefully designed Paratext training can help translators leverage the power of Paratext for improved translation quality.